Good evening, everybody. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it. First, I want to extend a sincere thank you to the South Carolina Education Association for hosting us and for bringing educators, community members, it's great, and leaders together for this important conversation. Tonight is especially meaningful because we also have the opportunity to recognize and celebrate 60 years since the historic merger that helped shape the South Carolina Education Association as we know it today. For 6 decades, the SCEA has carried forward a commitment to South Carolina's educators, students, public schools, and communities. That represents generations of teachers and education professionals who have shown up every day believing that every child deserves an opportunity to learn, grow, and build a better future. And that spirit of service is exactly why gatherings like tonight matter. A town hall should be more than a speech. It should be a conversation, an opportunity to listen, to ask questions, to talk about the challenges facing our communities and schools, and to discuss what we expect from the people who we want to represent us. Our guest tonight believes that good leadership starts with listening to the people you hope to serve. So on behalf of everybody here, thank you again to the South Carolina Education Association for your hospitality and for 60 years of advocacy and service, and for creating the space for tonight's conversation. Thank you to YDCM's second vice chair, Wes Russell, for moderating tonight, and it is my sincere pleasure to welcome Zion Khalifa, the Democratic nominee for United States Congress in South Carolina's 2nd Congressional District.
Good evening, South Carolinians. So my name is Zion Khalifa, and I am your Democratic nominee that has been elected and nominated to defeat Joe Wilson come November 3rd here in South Carolina's 2nd Congressional District. And as I am only 25 years old, I'm also the youngest ever in South Carolina history to be nominated, and I'll be the youngest ever in South Carolina history to be elected come November. So I grew up as the oldest of 3. And around 12 years old, I became the man of the house. So from that, you should be able to understand that my parents probably were not ready to be parents. Now, growing up in my household, we got used to things like not having food and the rent center representatives knocking at the door, as well as the lights being occasionally off. But my story doesn't stop there. Around 8th grade, the second quarter, the first day of the second quarter, I remember very, very precisely. The government came and took me out of that home and placed me with my father. But that also didn't last as long as we would have hoped. About a year and a half in, after multiple police visits, we suffered an accident that was caused by abuse. And at that point, DSS came in and removed me from that home and placed me in South Carolina's infamous foster care system. And so at that time, I made sure that my story was not determined by my environment. At a young age, I was putting myself through high school while others were putting themselves through college. So I understood the pressures of life very early. I was working 50 hours a week. I was participating in about 6 to 7 sports, really just to take the pressure off. And I was also doing a role at a local university. Now, during that time, I'm gonna tell you, one of the sports I played was I fenced. A lot of people don't know this. I fenced back in my childhood. Now, the thing about fencing, I remember very, very vividly. My coach, every morning, he would have a Wendy's chili and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was a very odd combination. And I remember this because every time I made a mistake, I could smell it through the mask. So I assure you, I did not make the same mistake twice, ever. But through that time, I put myself through undergrad with track scholarships. I was a Gamecock running track, as well as academic scholarships and the Pell Grant, which is currently under attack. So my opportunities were here due to a lot of different environmental factors that contributed to my story. But as soon as I graduated, I went off to Baton Rouge, Louisiana to, to attend law school at Southern University Law Center. And at that time, I continued to follow things that I believed in. So I worked with the ACLU, where that's one of my, honestly, I treasure that experience above a lot of experiences. But I also worked for the Alliance for Children's Rights, where we focused on foster youth and homeless youth in the public defender's office. So I've always been in advocacy. That's not something that's going to change. But after I graduated law school, I came back home. So I want to build a better South Carolina. And I want to ensure that others do not have to go through the same lived experiences that I had to go through. I want to ensure that the cost of living comes down. I want to ensure that people have the access to opportunities in which they deserve. I want to ensure that the government officials are accountable to the people and not corporations. So it's my plan, my goal, and really our plan and our goal to accomplish these things, to affect change in a way that we can actually feel it in our pockets and in our future, to ensure that our children, our grandchildren have the access that they need, to ensure that the country that they inherit still exists. I mean, right now, it's hard to recognize the America we live in. And if we don't do something fast, it's going to be gone before we know it. So my name is Zion Khalifa, and I want to be your champion for change. I want to be the person that you can go to ensure that when things need to happen, you know that they're happening. I want to be the person you can go to know that your interests are on that table. I'll be the representative that you deserve, and we will win this come November. Thank you.
Wonderful. My name is Wes Russell. I'm the second vice chair of the Young Democrats of the Central Midlands. I will be serving as moderator for tonight's town hall. Many of you already know, but if you would like to submit a question, you can do so physically and bring it to this box on this table, or you can submit it via the QR code up here. The only request we have is that while answering questions, you allow the candidate to be the one who answers. All of you have lovely voices and are very good at doing applause, but that will not be necessary during the answer. Please wait until after he finishes speaking. Mr. Khalifa, we'll begin with the first question I have. What are some safeguards you can implement to prevent teenagers from accessing guns in our community?
So this question, honestly, it resonates with me a lot. Growing up in Aiken County, we had a lot of friends and family members that didn't make it out of Aiken County, a lot of friends and family members that didn't get to graduate or live their future because they were victims of gun violence. So the main thing here is ensuring that when guns are being, or I don't like using the word guns, in the military, they kind of teach us weapons. We like saying weapons, we don't like saying guns. But when weapons are being purchased, even on the street, there needs to be an actual hand-to-hand transaction being accounted for, receipts. In South Carolina, if Billy Joe sold Suzanne a firearm, then the only people who know that is Billy Joe and Suzanne. So when it's like that, it creates a problem where guns and weapons and firearms and artillery at this point is what is allowed here in this country. They're getting into the hands of people who shouldn't have them, like teenagers. So now this is a very sophisticated and complex problem because there are already a lot of weapons on the street that shouldn't be on the street. There are a lot of attachments for weapons that are on the street that shouldn't be on the street. So it's going to be an effort that's going to involve everybody, but it's going to have to be done constitutionally. So my plan, my goal with keeping the people safe in this regard is to ensure that there's heavier safeguards whenever there are private exchanges. So regulation as far as private exchanges should be actually implemented. Right now, there's really not any regulation in that regard, as well as ensuring that background checks are effectively carried through. Some people may not know, but if a background check doesn't come back in a certain period of time, that firearm store can still sell the weapon to whoever was purchasing it. Even if they were going to fail the background check, if it doesn't come back in time, they can still purchase that weapon. So things like this need to be revamped and reformed so that weapons are only in hands of people who are legally able to carry them.
Thank you. We'll pull one from the written group. Hopefully everyone's handwriting is up to par. What do you think is people's biggest assumption about you as a candidate, and how do you refute it?
So people make a lot of assumptions about me, honestly. I'll say the biggest is that I am a DSA socialist. That's what the Republican Party is. That's what they're doing. Any Democrat that's running, we are all now socialists or quote unquote communists. That's the assumption that we're battling, and we just battle it with straight policy. I mean, we live in a mixed society where capitalism is being upheld by socialism in a sense, where the things like education, roads, hospital, these things ensure that the capitalist society can operate. So it's like a car. A car has a lot of components, and you need to give attention to all of these components. That's our economy. So if you don't have an educated worker, that could negatively affect a business. If you don't have a healthy worker, that could affect the business. If you have a worker that doesn't have any access to food, that can affect the business. So although we're a capitalist society and economy, we also support some socialism type of programs to ensure that the people are still in a position to succeed. Now, combating it is, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. They're going to say, the Republicans are going to continue to say that I'm a socialist. My last name is Khalifa. I mean, they're shooting at it over and over again. That's what they're going to do. I think we read a comment today that, oh, he has a Muslim last name. What does that have to do with you not being able to afford your groceries? And so I'll also give some context of my last name and my full name, since I haven't done that before and to anybody. So my name is Zion Khalifa because my mother wanted me to have a biblical first name, which is why she named me Zion. And my father did not want me to continue to be linked to the slave masters who owned my ancestors. So I would have been Zion Williams, but my father changed it at him to ensure that we no longer are carrying that old name of our family. So that's why my name is Zion Khalifa.
Thank you. Just a reminder for those submitting questions online, please make sure that your questions are directed at the candidates and not at the event itself. I promise we can answer questions afterward as well about who was invited and where they are. Springing off of the last question, I'll ask this one. With many rural areas struggling with limited access to care, what federal policies would you support to protect local hospitals and expand affordable health care and mental health services? And do you support Medicare for all?
So yes, for rural healthcare to survive, Medicaid and Medicare have to be protected. Medicaid has to be expanded. So I give this example of, when you look at a hospital, they have to make money. And when you look at a patient, they have to be able to afford care. So if a patient cannot afford care, then a hospital cannot make money. And if a hospital cannot make money, a hospital is going to close down. That's just how it works. And so since that's how it works, we have to ensure that people have the resources to get care. And so that means protecting Medicaid and Medicare. Now, I do support a Medicare for all model for sure. But I also feel like there should be an option so that those who do not want it have the option to not get it. But there should be a system that is available to ensure that everybody has access to healthcare regardless of your income.
Another one from Tayyip Sadiq. Am I saying that correctly? Perfect. The children the UN BT Salem have documented for the last 3 years that the IDF has targeted children using weapons from the United States. The UAE military and government have also sent weapons to the RSF, which is starving and killing children in Sudan. Will you co-sponsor legislation to uphold our Leahy's, LACOs, and block weapons transfers from military with while committing human rights violations?
Yes, I don't think any government that is committing human rights violations, I do not believe that we should be supplying them with any weapons or any aid for militarization. That's where I stand.
A little bit from the crowd. How does your platform differ from your opponent, Joe Wilson's?
Well, Joe Wilson, when we look at his platform, I really don't know what his platform is these days, to be honest, because his website says one thing and his voting record says another. So we truly don't know what Joe Wilson's platform is. So if we're looking at the current majority platform compared to mine, that would be the best contrast that we can make in this current juncture. So the current administration is focusing on corporate profits compared to the working class people. And I'll say that is where we differ the most, because my focus are on the people who actually are in the district, who are living day to day, who are on their Social Security, their retirement, who are working paycheck to paycheck. Those are the people who, the government should be working for. That's the majority. Now, the current administration also, they've made a lot of targeted attacks at many groups of people as well. And so that's also where we differ. I don't see a reason to attack any group of people or discriminate in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't make sense for a government, definitely here in America, who we're known as a melting pot. So if we're a melting pot, we shouldn't be discriminating against anybody in the country. Also, Joe Wilson is pretty much just a rubber stamp for Trump. And so we definitely differ in that regard. As you know, he's sponsored the $250 bill. Nothing like that would be coming from me. We're at a time where people are actually struggling, and the things that he's focusing on seems very theatrical. And like it's literally something you would see on a TV show. And so at that point, the needs of the people are not getting addressed. And so our platforms differ because my platform focuses on the people and his platform focuses on high leadership in Washington.
Piggybacking off that for another question about your opponent. You talk about bringing a new generation of leadership to Congress. What are 2 or 3 things you would actually do differently from Joe Wilson that people in the 2nd District would notice in their everyday lives?
So for one, I plan to have 1 to 2 town hall every month. So if that's virtual or in person, it will be either the 1st and the 15th or the 30th and the 15th. So it will be at the beginning and mid of every single month. We're going to bounce around from different counties. And so whenever you hear me speak on accountability in my platform, this is part of what I'm talking about. Because the voters cannot keep the representative accountable if he's not there. That's just how it works. If you can call his office, you can keep his office accountable, but you can't keep him accountable. So you don't have access to him to ask him the questions in which you have, as we see, and so you can't ask the questions that you need answered. You can't get the concerns that you have addressed because he is not here. And so one of the biggest things is I will be here, or you will at least hear from me because I'll be virtual if we're in Washington voting on something. But I'll always make my first attempt is to be in person. If you speak to my team, you'll know I don't like doing anything virtual. Even when they schedule me for something, I'm like, do it in person, So I will enjoy being back here as much as I humanly possible can get it done. Now, the second thing, again, is what's being addressed. So I'm not somebody who just goes with a majority party thought process. What I support will solely be determined on how it will affect the people who live here. It's not about what does the Democratic platform want to do as a whole. Now, if the Democratic platform does one thing as a whole, but it would negatively affect South Carolinians, then I'm not going for it. That's not something that I'm going to vote with. Now, so I'm not saying that there are a list of things that they're doing. What I'm saying is, regardless of the policy, my first thought is, how will this policy affect the people in the district before I vote yes or no?
Springing off of that, this question starts with, it's January 2029, and you're asking the people of District 2 to send you back to Congress. What are 3 things you hope that you'll be able to point to and say, I got that done?
The protection and expansion of Medicaid, our resources here in South Carolina as far as education being supported effectively, and resources here in South Carolina for our roads, travel, and infrastructure being effectively handled. So money coming back to the district. It's currently Joe Wilson has seniority, but he's not bringing any funds back to where it matters. And so I want to be able to show you deliverables of things that I've done for you.
This may have a very similar answer. How would you sum up your 3 most important policy positions?
So it's affordability, accountability, and opportunity. So a lot of people don't think also infrastructure goes into both as far as affordability and opportunity. But affordability, because right now that's our number one issue. Regardless if you're retired, working, or planning to work, if you're a young child, affordability goes into a lot of the problems that we currently are experiencing. So that's even with education. If a child is hungry, they cannot get an adequate education. And so that's an affordability issue. If the teachers don't have resources to teach the class, affordability issue. So that's why affordability is my number one. Opportunity comes in because we need to be able to afford the life, but we need the opportunities to then get to where we need to get to. So if we do not have access to an actual careers, then how could we expect to afford anything as well? When we're looking at what the current administration is doing, they're making it more difficult to get yourself out of a situation. Whenever we look at how they're handling education on a higher level, for example, their attacks of the Department of Education, that makes it more difficult for students to get an education. If it's more difficult for them to get an education, it'll be more difficult to make more money. If it's more difficult to make more money, then we're back at the affordability issue. And so opportunity, that's why we're focusing on opportunity as well. Now, accountability is because, again, you should be able to hold me accountable. And you should also be able to hold all other elected officials accountable. That means no inside trading. That means being present whenever you need and a question answered. That means being consistent. That means also whenever I go to vote, it'll be based off of the interests of the people. It's not something that I'll be going up there making a personal opinion. I'm a representative of the district once elected. So it's not just Zion going up there, it's a CD2 representative going up there.
Speaking of going up there and accountability, this question comes from Tim Brown. With the rising costs of everyday essentials, affordability is a primary concern for local families. What specific legislative steps will you take in Congress to lower costs? And how will you work with your fellow lawmakers to get relief passed?
So there are a lot of areas in which we could talk about with affordability. But what I'll speak to right now is housing costs. So we did see a win over the Georgia Senator Warnock, did have a win with helping as far as ensuring that large corporations cannot come and buy a lot of land and then throw houses on it. So now here in CD2, definitely Lexington and Richland County, there has been pushback from the people about developers coming in, putting cookie cutter homes in, and charging crazy prices for it, because that has a negative effect on everybody. Now nobody can purchase their first home, and then we're having more traffic on the roads, and my roads are not expanded or taken care of, so it's just piles on issues. And so what I would want to do is go in and help and support and draft legislation to ensure that developers have a limit. Developers have a limit when they come in and they buy up property or buy up land, that they have a limit on how much they can buy and how high they can charge for the home. It should be reflective of the community. It should not be, if the neighbor's house is $100,000, the house that they just throw on a cookie cutter home should not be $300,000. And now because it negatively affects everybody. Now nobody can afford to live there because that's not the community in which existed before. And so that's the legislation that I would start with to assist with the affordability in the housing regard.
Absolutely. And this question is the inverse of this. Rather than how would you restrict development, how will you support small businesses and local economic development?
So I would want to ensure that these tax incentives are going to new and small businesses compared to the large corporations. Walmart has enough money. It doesn't matter. You can give Walmart a tax deduction, but they have the money already. So if you give the small businesses these tax incentives, that helps the district as a whole, because small businesses they're really they build the culture of the district, and they also support the district. Those are those family businesses that are run and stayed in, and people have a way to actually get out of their situation. I mean, education puts us in a place, but you also could run your own business. But here in South Carolina, I've known and spoken to a lot of voters who have literally told me they had to shut down and close their doors because they couldn't afford the taxes, while Walmart is getting a tax cut of the year. So I would say giving these small businesses these tax incentives to promote businesses keeping the doors open. But yes.
Several people in here have asked questions about immigration. We'll touch on that now. From Zane Rossler, how do you propose reforming the legal immigration system to make it more affordable, efficient, and accessible while balancing security and economic needs?
So I'll say the first thing we need to do, we need more immigration judges. That's very obvious. I've always said, whenever people are immigrating to the country and they're doing things the right way and they're suffering from the chaos that we have created, that is not their fault. That is a fault of our own, because we have created this chaos that they're trying to operate in. And so helping clear this chaos and reforming this system should be our start. It's whenever we're looking at how to effectively handle this immigration crisis. So right now, the backlog is probably one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with. I went to speak to voters and their families and unions, and when I was speaking to them, a woman told me, she said that her mother had been trying to get a legal status for about 7 years. They'd spent over $10,000 and they still don't have legal status. And now in the current day and age, they're afraid of going outside because they don't want to get deported for not having legal status, even though they've spent all this time and money in order to have one. So that doesn't sound like fault of their own. That sounds like the fault of the system. Now, when I worked in Louisiana, we spent some time where we focused on getting youth who did not have legal status once if they were abandoned or abused. And now, I don't know what incentive the firm had outside of, just the feel-good incentive. But if we give some firms some incentives while while hiring more immigration judges, then we can get this handled a lot quicker. The power of the purse is a serious thing. So if we're giving law firms the incentive to do pro bono work to assist in getting current immigrants who are seeking legal status the right way, representation in the juvenile courts and in immigration court, I truly feel like this would move along this process a lot faster. And because during that time, it took us 3 months to get 7 children legal status and a green card. So that's what resources at a firm can do. So now, if we're incentivizing firms across the country to handle this issue, then we have the lawyers and the attorneys to help the situation, and we hire the immigration court judges to then hear the cases.
I'm going to take some of these questions and combine them into one for this next one. Staying on immigration, there's several who have asked your position on immigrations and customs enforcement specifically. What is your position on their current performance, and do you support their abolition?
So their current performance is terrible. Let's start there. It's inhumane, and they're handling things in a way that just doesn't reflect who we are as Americans. Now, I don't support the abolition of ICE. I support the reforming of ICE. I say this because if we look at the Obama administration, the Obama administration deported more illegal immigrants than the current Trump administration. The reason there weren't, any alarms going off is because they did it humanely. They did it the correct way. And so there's a lot of things that need to happen for the current ICE, to be reformed effectively. For one, they got shot gloves before they got body cameras, and that kind of shows you where their priorities are. Their priorities are not on being transparent or accountable. Their priorities are on really is causing chaos, is what it seems like. They're operating in a chaos they have created. And so now we need to ensure that they all have body cameras. That's number one. They need to all have effective training. Number two, because it's like they're pulling random people off the street, offering them a $100,000 sign-on bonus and giving them a badge and a gun and a mask. That's truly what it feels like. And so we need to actually have proper training for whoever is going to carry a federal badge. You shouldn't be carrying a federal badge without proper training. You shouldn't be able to carry a weapon without proper training, definitely when you're working for the government. I don't know any other government entity that allows somebody to carry a weapon without proper training. I think we need to do a more in-depth background check on a lot of these officers, quote unquote officers. I mean, we can call them officers, but as well, and also I've read and I've seen where a lot of times these background checks don't even have to go all the way through in some cases where they're still hiring the ICE officers. And so these things need to be looked at. These things need to be handled, and they need to be held accountable for all of their actions. Regardless of if you have a badge or not, you should be able to be held accountable for what you do on American soil and wherever you are.
We'll talk a little bit more about foreign policy now. This question was submitted and says, what is your approach to foreign policy regarding ongoing conflicts and countering foreign adversaries?
So as a country, we have always ensured that we are available in a lot of situations. We have ensured that we are present in a lot of areas. We have ensured that we cover a lot of ground. I believe that I understand the reasoning behind it. I understand the method behind it. And I think a lot of this needs to be done a lot more strategically and respectfully across the board. Now, when we're looking at conflicts over in Ukraine, it's I support supporting Ukraine, and so I say that given that we've had long-term conflicts with countries like Russia, and supporting countries like Ukraine put us in a position where we are, we if they overtake Ukraine, then what's next? And so we understand that we have had long-term conflicts with a lot of countries. We've made a lot of noise since the 250 years that America has been here, and also because diplomacy matters. Diplomacy matters, and ensuring that we can be diplomatic in multiple areas is also a priority. And so I support ensuring that the foreign countries are taken care of as far as the ones that we have had long-standing relationships with. I support us staying in NATO. I support us in ensuring that peace is there through actual diplomatic relationships, not just destroying countries.
This is very related. Do you or have you served in the military?
Yes. I served as an airman over at Joint Base Charleston here in South Carolina.
Perfect. This question, I do not know how you'll answer, but it was submitted for you, and so I will let you give your take on it. In the 2026 South Carolina gubernatorial race, you took the unusual step of publicly tearing into a fellow South Carolina conservative representative, Nancy Mace, accusing her of showboating and selfishness just as she launched her campaign. Your son, Alan Wilson, is also running for governor in that same crowded Republican field. How do you respond to critics who say you are using your congressional platform and influence to clear the field for family interests rather than fostering unity in the state's Republican Party?
I think that's a Joe Wilson question. Yeah. So yeah, that question was not for me. Yeah. As soon as he said Nancy, I didn't know what he was talking about.
Perfect. We'll switch to some domestic issues. In that case, you might have more in your purview. First question regards women's rights to choose. Do you support women's right to choose abortion? Will you continue to support use of mifepristone, especially through telehealth?
Yes. Now, I've always took a stance that I don't believe that a politician belongs in a doctor's office to make those decisions. I don't believe a politician belongs in an online chat between a mother or a prospective mother and their doctor. It's not my place to be. It's not my decision to make. I, as a person, even me as a man and as a person, I just don't. That's just not my place. And to be honest, we're in a position where a lot of politicians interject themselves in situations in which they have no business being in. And so with that, that puts us in situations like this where these type of questions exist, and they shouldn't exist because the problem shouldn't exist. Because a politician has no clue what that woman is going through and why she's making the decisions she's making, why the doctor is recommending what they're recommending. Because we're not in that office. We're not in the doctor's office. We're in elected office. That's two separate offices, and so we should ensure that they stay separated.
This is also about public health. How will you go about restoring support for public health, like vaccines and care for mothers and children?
So, me being military, we had to get vaccines regardless. You didn't have a choice, personally. So, but I also understand the reasoning behind vaccines, and so I support people getting vaccines. I mean, it's whenever people are vaccinated, generally everybody's healthier. You know that's the science behind it. And so I'll support public health by supporting people being in positions who are actual scientists making science decisions. And instead of people who are not scientists making decisions about health and people's health.
Speaking of limiting other legislators, do you support term limits?
Yes, I support term limits. Now, my plan is to support in drafting legislation once in to grandfather in the current legislators, because otherwise they're not voting for it. That's the truth of the matter. Unless you at least give them an anchor into staying in, they're not going to vote against their own interests. So grandfathering them in and imposing term limits on any newly elected congressional member after that bill. So it might not affect all of us in the current time, but the future, it will definitely have a great effect on.
Putting my thumb on the scale, what sort of term limit would you implement for your position?
So honestly, I feel like 16 years that's a lot. And so about maybe maxing out at 5 terms. So about 10 years, 10 to 12 years. Now you do that, then that puts us in a position where positions are not solely based on seniority. Money isn't solely based on seniority. There'll be a diverse, just age of people, race of people, just diverse group of people in general in office. Because in that you're doing it that way, that doesn't change. You can run for office. Doesn't matter how old you are, as long as you're over 25. So that doesn't change that. So that still allows those who want to get in at a later point in their life to get in. But it just ensures that people don't stay in too long, because somebody gave me a reference that you lived in a house for 25 to 30 years. You might not know that house needs to be painted, but those who are around you and they driving past the house, they might see that, like, man, that house needs to be painted. It's been over time, it's gotten worse and worse, but you are so used to it that you don't see it because you're so close to it. Another analogy is a lot of us don't know what our own house smells like because we've been in it so long, and so sometimes it's got to change, because whenever somebody else comes into your house, unless you know it smells like something, that's something you find out.
Well, piggybacking off that, you said your term limit was 5, which is perfect for this next question. Do you commit to running 4 more terms?
I don't want to be a career politician. That's not my goal. I'll say 5 terms that would really be my max. Now, because me, I want to do something that I want to help trailblaze it for here in the 2nd district. It's right now we haven't had a Democrat elected since the 60s, and those Democrats were different Democrats anyways. And so people have to see change to feel change. And once they feel change, they will change. And so I want to lead by example, and I want to uphold what I said as well, what I support and what I'm campaigning on. If I believe that people can be in Congress for too long, then I shouldn't be in Congress for too long. But that's just how things work. A lot of people, they get elected and they kind of change their entire thought process. And that's not going to be me. And so 5 terms is my max.
Once again, combining a few questions here. One of them is from Sophia. who's not currently in the room, do you support gay and trans rights? They are. Couldn't see you. Do you support gay and trans rights? Is there anything at all at the congressional level that you could or would do one way or another?
So yes, firstly, I do support trans and gay rights. At a congressional level, any legislation that comes through that would be discriminatory, I would vote against. That's just my main thing. Now, right now, there are a lot of executive orders that were made targeting that group of people, and so in that sense, again, I would assist and support legislation to prevent discrimination from continuing and prevent any future discrimination from happening.
Expanding on that, how will you make sure underserved neighborhoods or citizens have a voice in your decisions?
That goes back to the town halls. So as I said, I'll be at 2 town halls a month. That way, and I'll be bouncing around from counties. So it doesn't put people in a position where they cannot participate because of access, because like I said, they'll also be available virtually. Doing that allows everybody to have a 2 cents in the decision, compared to just going off of what I'm hearing in person, virtually, and responding to any emails, phone calls. I'll ensure that we'll have a great staff to get all the thoughts together as well, so that we are making decisions based off of what the people in the district want.
This goes more to the economy. What specific spending cuts do you support to address the national debt and inflation?
ICE, that'll be my start. ICE they have a historic budget, and they are causing historic chaos. So we should start there. Maybe they didn't have so much money, they wouldn't be buying shot gloves, So we need to, that's number one. Now, as a country, we buy a lot of missiles, we waste a lot of missiles, and we don't use a lot of that money here, but we could be using it. So I would say those would be my 2 spending cuts, but I would still want to ensure that veterans and retirees are effectively supported, and them and their families are effectively supported. So ensuring that whenever we're making cuts, that I'm not cutting benefits as well.
These two also tangentially related to the economy. What is your policy on unions, and do you support their expansion?
So yes, I support union expansion. I'm actually endorsed by the Steelworkers Union down in Aiken County. I've been and worked with them for really the entirety of the campaign to learn more about unions, and to better understand what they need. So the first thing that I would be attacking is the whole right to work. That in itself puts people in a position where you can be fired tomorrow, and it doesn't matter. Like, to the company, they don't need a reason, and that weakens unions' ability to negotiate whenever there's a right to work in place. And so that is the first thing that I would attack as far as policy, to ensure that unions are protected and give them a little bit more negotiating power with corporations and businesses.
All right, apologies, I'm scrolling through. I'm trying to make sure I get to everyone's question. What committee is one that you plan to serve on, and why?
I'll say housing. Housing prices doesn't only include houses being too expensive, it's also including people being homeless and people not being able to afford to live in the homes that they're in. As far as rent, rent right now, I know when I was in undergrad, my second year, so that's about 2020, my rent was $1,200 for a 1-bedroom here in Columbia, and so that's crazy in itself. Now, I can't even imagine what it is right now, because prices just keep going up. They're just going up, going up, going up. And so I would want to get in on a committee in which I can help support in a way that people are housed. Is one of the biggest fears of people are being unhoused. Is if you're unhoused, now you have an array of other issues. Because if you're unhoused, you can't. Where are you going to put your food? You don't have any food to store, to keep. You have non-perishables. Where are you going to put them at? If you're unhoused, how are you going to bathe? If you're not bathing, how are you going to stay healthy? It's whenever you're unhoused, it creates more issues on top of what you're already having to deal with. And so if we're looking at the government in a sense of ensuring that people are in a position to be okay and to actually work towards a successful life, then we need to support in a way that prevents issues that will be more expensive over time. It's less expensive to keep somebody housed than to take care of them once they're unhoused.
These next few will be pretty quick questions. Do you support the SAVE Act?
I do not support the SAVE Act. I think the SAVE Act is attacking a problem that generally doesn't actually exist and creating a new problem. And it'll be an expensive problem also. So I don't support the SAVE Act. I think I truly don't believe the SAVE Act will be passed. Just in the current state of the country, I don't believe the SAVE Act will be passed. Now, if it is passed, it will cause a lot of issues, as we're well aware of. But I would, like I said, I don't support the SAVE Act. It puts people in a position where they are disenfranchised. Groups of people will be set even further back. So, no.
This next one, what happened to the reflecting pool?
I have no clue.
Another, hopefully easy one. Who won the 2020 election? I assume that's presidential.
No.
All right. A few more have come in. They're not sorting for me quite easily, unfortunately. This next one, do you support expanding the Supreme Court?
So, I don't support expanding the Supreme Court. I support restricting the amount of time in which they can be in the Supreme Court. Now, my logic behind that is if we expand it now, who's to stop the party that's in power years from now from expanding it again? And then years after that, expanding it again and again and again to accomplish the same goal over and over again. So I don't believe that any job should be secure enough where you're in there for the rest of your life. It's when the job is like that, then who can really hold you accountable? Nobody can. And you don't care about your decisions because you're not going to get fired. So ensuring that people are only in there for a certain period of time would be my focus compared to expanding the Supreme Court.
Now, just so everyone is aware, we are coming up at an hour. I currently have 3 questions I've not gotten to. I will get to. If anyone has any last-minute submissions they would like to turn in as well, please be sure to do so. After that, we will turn into a much more casual environment and in the stream, just making everyone aware. First question. South Carolina faces increasing risks from hurricanes, flooding, and other climate-driven events. South Carolina is experiencing some of the fastest rising flood risks on the East Coast, with sea levels projected to rise up to 1 foot by 2050, threatening homes, wetlands, and drinking water systems. What steps would you take to strengthen water systems, storm-resilient infrastructure, and clean, renewable energy resilience in coastal and rural communities?
So now we have SRS here, but that's not a rural community. But as far as clean energy, we can start utilizing nuclear energy here in the district. Now, a lot of what I'm going to be doing is focusing here in the district. So the coast is not in the district, but as far as things for the coast, you know, climate change is real, and it's getting hotter, and winters are getting colder. So we need to really start restricting how companies are polluting the air. That that in itself could assist us in the effects of climate change. You know, it's the companies and corporations that are having the biggest effects on the climate. We should start looking at regulation to ensure that that is under control first. Um, but I do support, like I said, I support clean energy like nuclear energy. Now, once I'm in Congress, I can start to learn more about what is offered over in the coastal areas to support things like this, and maybe we can work to get uh, types of facilities in that area to again support clean and renewable energy. That's definitely something I would get to Congress and look into and learn more about.
Nonprofits are often the organizations closest to the people dealing with housing, food insecurity, healthcare, transportation, youth services, and other community needs. If elected, how would you use your position in Congress to strengthen effective local nonprofits and help connect them with federal resources without creating unnecessary bureaucracy?
So that goes back in, as I said in my opening, I worked at the Alliance for Children's Rights. So that's a nonprofit where we specifically focused on homeless youth and foster youth. And so I saw them not having the resources in which they needed to accomplish what they needed to accomplish. And for them, we covered a lot of the Los Angeles area. And so any legislation that is drafted, I would obviously support to ensure that nonprofits are able to get the funds in which they need to effectively operate. You know, with the current administration, we have seen a lot of grants be taken away from a lot of nonprofits and small businesses and things that would help the environment and the communities. And so really taking a stance to ensure that grants are actually looked at for the merits of the grants and not just a bureaucratic reason, and not just because, well, my friend put it in, so I'll make a call and get that done. And that type of issue is what's causing what we're having right now, where favors are being put in front of needs. And so once I'm elected, we'll ensure that whenever a nonprofit puts in a grant, that grant is being looked at and the needs are being looked at to ensure that we get them the money that they need to solve the issues that they're trying to solve, because they're the ones that are actually in the community doing the work.
All right, you've become a lot more popular. I have a lot more questions coming in. All right, first up, what are you currently doing to educate young and newly registered voters?
So we register new voters and we speak to voters. Throughout my primary and up to now, we've been going to high schools and speaking to the seniors about the importance of voting, as well as educating them in what their vote means in a midterm year compared to a presidential election. But we're also doing a series called Conversations with Khalifa, where we're hitting the younger group of people on social media by having conversations about the issues in which we're experiencing and having conversations about how voting matters and why it matters and what effects that it has, but also speaking at churches. So you'll learn very quickly, I'm somewhere every day. And so everywhere where I go, I ensure that I push the importance of voting. Even on National Night Out, I was over in the Piney Grove area speaking on the importance of voting and why voting matters and what your vote does and who's on the slates. And so it's me being young puts me in a position where the elders of the community they like me to come and speak to the younger crowd because I'm somebody that they can relate to. And so being somebody that they can relate to, I assist and I use that as a chance to inform them of the positions we're in and why we're here and how we can get out of it.
All right. Just so everyone's aware, we are running low on time. So any question I am not able to get to during this town hall can be asked during the meet and greet section. There will be two more coming your way. First is from the live stream itself. You mentioned that you personally have been affected by the foster care system. What changes would you like to see taken to better protect and provide for kids in the system?
So I would say there's two things I'll look at. One thing is I feel like foster parents, there should be an actual and thorough background check done past the top layer, like a psychological background done. Because a lot of times, these, at least, so I'll tell you a short story. I was in the first foster home I was in, I was not in there very long. And as many may know, South Carolina's first year stability rate is, lowest of the low. And so while I was in my first year at this foster home, I didn't speak at all. Like I did not speak. So they called me a psychopath and it was, it just really was not a good situation. But I didn't speak because I didn't feel welcome in that home. I didn't feel like there was anything for me to talk about. If I spoke, it was to ask for something to eat or what I needed to do. Every Tuesday we would watch WWE every single Tuesday, and I don't even like WWE. I was a wrestler, like I was an actual so I was ranked 6th in South Carolina. I'm just throwing that out there. But so I was like, I actually like wrestling, so I didn't like watching WWE. But we sat down every Tuesday, would watch it, and they had 2 dogs. And the dogs were trained in a way where they'll put their head on your knee when it's time to use the bathroom or they want to go outside. And we'll get up, we'll open the door, let them out, close the door, sit back down. They'll scratch at the door, get up, open the door, let them in, close the door, sit back down. And if they put their head back on your knee again right then, doesn't matter. Get back up, handle it. Get back up, handle it. Get back up, handle it. And so really the dogs have more respect than the kids in that home. And we knew that. We knew that throughout the time. We was eating rations when there was plenty of food. We was doing work in the community and the parents were getting paid for it. So it was like a situation where it just wasn't somewhere I wanted to be. I mean, obviously foster care is somewhere you want to be anyways, but that home was really not somewhere I wanted to be. So then I got removed from that home and put in a group home. The group home was honestly better. It was honestly better, and I wish that they had the resources in which they needed to make it even better for the kids that are there. So one of the things that I would do is support funding for the group homes because the group homes are holding dozens of children and they're understaffed, they're underpaid, they don't have the resources. I remember during undergrad what I did a drive where we took a lot of like sports equipment and basketballs because I remember being there, the basketballs had no grip on them, so it was always flat. So it's like that's how we spend our time at the group home. And so I did a drive to assist with that. And so seeing the actual firsthand issues, I would say psychological checks on the foster parents, as well as resources for the group homes.
Right. And a final question, and I think a fitting one to end on. How will you advocate for addressing problems by talking rather than violence?
So I'm not going to put my hands on anybody, for starters. I believe that a lot of things can be handled through conversation. As a lawyer, that's kind of what we're trained to do. We're literally trained to handle conflict and resolve conflict through conversation and learning what will make both sides happy. It's about really, well, not happy, just not upset. If it's in politics, if one person's happy, then somebody's mad. That's just how it works. So it's about both groups just being comfortable. And finding that point is where we have to get to. I've knocked doors this past week, and we targeted Republicans directly. That was because it's that time in the campaign where we got to talk to them. So we targeted Republicans during knocking doors, but we did a very, very specific age range for Republicans. We did between 25 and 35. And so in talking to them, one of them actually broke down into tears because he was afraid for his son, what the country is becoming for his son. Another said that they left Joe Wilson's vote line blank every year since he yelled "you lied" at Obama, but yet they didn't vote for a Democrat. Another said that they're worried again for how their child will succeed in the world that we're headed towards. And so that means that there are Republicans who are out there who are trying to raise their families that actually feel the pain of the decisions of their party. And that means talking will work because they're ready to talk. I knocked on the door. I said, "My name is Zion Khalifa, and I want to understand your concerns because I feel as voters have been ignored for way too long." After that, they start listing them. And so that means that they are ready to talk. The environment, the economy, just our current situation has created a space where Republicans and not the far right Republicans, but the Republicans who really classify themselves as independent in their mind, but they're really right-leaning, those Republicans are ready to sit down and have conversations and figure out how to solve the mess that they helped put us in. So.
Well, thank you very much for candidate Zion Khalifa for attending tonight. We greatly appreciate your participation. I know this is not easy. There was a lot of difficult questions asked back to back, so thank you very much. He will be available to speak if anyone has any questions after this town hall. We also want to make sure we thank the SCEA for allowing us to have this room for the night. Thank you very much. And finally, I want to say a huge, absolutely, please. Here, if you'll be on camera, if you step over there and take this.
I'm Brandy. I'm here from the SCEA. I just want to say that we are working on a Friend of Education membership category. It does not exist yet, but I have some yellow commitment cards. If you would like to fill one out, we can call you when we create that category. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, let me say thank you to all of you that came here tonight, that gave up your time to attend your civic duty. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm going to tell you how precious this is. Like I said, we will be available afterward if you want to speak to Zion or anybody else here from the SCEA or Young Democrats of the Central Midlands. There will also be a way to support all of those organizations out there in the hall. Thank you very much and have a wonderful evening.